All right, welcome everybody to another Clean Facts Know-How webinar. We are particularly excited about this subject today on gamification, not only because the topic is so relevant to the restoration, cleaning, trade service industries who are trying to figure out how they can motivate their staff, but also because I think we have an all-star panel of people to weigh in on this subject. We're coming at it from different perspectives. And the end result, I think, is going to be a webinar with very clear takeaways on how you can better use gamification and similar techniques to motivate and get your staff excited about the work that they're doing and contributing positively through your company to restoring homes. If you are in the chat, please kick things off by sharing where you're tuning in from and the company you're with. Always very cool to see people chime in from all across North America. And similarly, we'll do the same thing over here. So we'll go around the table. And my first question to everyone, maybe introduce yourself, name, title, where you're tuning in from, and then why are you so passionate about employee and staff engagement? And Steve, we'll start with you.
Thanks. Steve Lozick from FP Property Restoration. We operate 6 locations in Florida, restoration, full construction, training, and gamification of employment. It's a passion of mine because there's no bigger win for us as a company than when we are able to hire someone at a position and bring them up through the ranks and later on in life they're a leader, and we do that in a way that's enjoyable for them. So it's become a part of our culture at FB.
Awesome. Yeah. FP Property Restoration, I think one of the real innovators in the restoration industry when it comes to employee engagement and training and career development. Gabe, I want to
Thanks.
throw it to you next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gabe Zickerman. So I'm an author of 4 books on the subject of gamification. Have a consulting firm. I've done a lot of work over the last 15 or 20 years on that topic. I teach at UCLA, and I've worked with a wide range of of organizations on the subject of creating engagement with employees and also with customers. So both kind of sides of it. Sometimes think of myself as a behavioral engineer where I use levers and tools from a wide palette of things to kind of drive and shape people's behavior in a kind of more desired way. Was there a question beyond that, or did you just want me to do the intro?
That's great. Hey, I think
Awesome.
if you're like me, you hear things like behavioral engineer and you're like, oh, that's a thread that I'm going to have to pull on a little bit later in this discussion. So don't
I don't
worry.
have any I don't have any hair to pull, so you can pull on whatever thread you'd like.
That sounds great. And Jeff, let's throw it to you.
Absolutely. I got to see what Gabe was doing once we got this webinar scheduled, and I thought we are going to talk about Donkey Kong and Mario or something, but I guess
Hey,
that's not
not
going to happen.
opposed. I've been training my whole life for that webinar.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm Jeff Cross. I'm with ISSA. It's a worldwide cleaning industry association, and we have 3 media brands, and one is CleanFacts. And many of you on the webinar today may be familiar with this brand. This is for cleaning and restoration professionals. So, just want to mention what I do there. So I don't work in the industry anymore. I used to have a cleaning and light restoration company years ago. So my part here as we go through this webinar is a lot of what I do now is I learn. I talk to people, we publish, I do a lot of video interviews, so I gather information. But one thing I did learn as a business owner years ago was it was all about engaging with the client and giving them what they need. They expected you to be able to get the spot out or get the floor dry. They expect that. That's baseline. What they often were surprised about was when you treated them really good. And I think that today's topic is great because if you get the employees to get on board with all you're doing as a business owner and everyone's on the same page, that's going to resonate down to those clients and that's going to increase revenue. So you're going to hear me say that a couple times, maybe a dozen times today. It's all about the conversation, the relationship, and making the client feel good.
Awesome. I think that's such a great place to start, Jeff. And what I want to do is level set. So let me take the position of a gamification skeptic. And let's rewind 30 years ago. I think some of this, things like you said, Gabe, around being like behavioral engineer, gamification, employee engagement. Terms like that, I think would really stand out like a sore thumb maybe 30, 40 years ago, right? 30, 40 years ago, the relationship between an employer and an employee felt more like, hey, yeah, the reward, if you do a good job, your reward is not some trophy. Your reward is called a paycheck. And I'm happy to give you that reward if you do a good job. That is the extent of our relationship between employer and employee. Let's fast forward to today. I think most of us can recognize that the relationship is not that transactional, or the same levers that maybe worked 30 or 40 years ago don't work anymore today. Maybe, Gabe, let me throw it to you first. Why should companies create a culture where employees, if I can just be cynical here, why should companies create a culture where employees are getting bonus prizes just for doing their job well?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Okay, so I think there's a few different factors, but let's start with the big one, which is called habituation. Okay, so this is a very, very important psychological condition, and we all experience it. And the easiest example of this I can ever give is: do you remember your very first paycheck? The very first one you ever got in your entire life? You were probably a teenager. You were delivering newspapers or doing whatever it was that you were doing. That first paycheck, the 50 bucks, whatever it was, you felt rich, right? You felt incredible. You could do whatever you wanted. You had your own money, right? Now, your last paycheck probably was many multiples of that original $50. You do not feel that multiple overjoyed for receiving that paycheck now. So the resulting happiness that comes from an expected reward. So salary is structured as an expected reward. It's something that's a given. It comes on a certain date, it's typically the same amount, right? The psychological satisfaction that comes from that expected reward is not as great as the unexpected reward. And that's, by the way, that's the arbitrage that casinos work off of. So that's literally the underlying psychology of casinos. So the unexpected reward, much more valuable than the expected reward. Over time, you price in expected behaviors such that they no longer produce the same kind of dopamine release that you get from other things. And this is a long way to say that while employees can be very happy with a regular, stable, awesome paycheck, you can come to a number that makes everybody feel really good. And there's a lot of employees for whom that is in fact sufficient. That doesn't produce that kind of frisson of excitement and happiness. And in an environment where you might be asking them to go above and beyond, you might be asking them to put in that extra little oomph of emotional energy, psychological energy. You certainly want them to do the best for the customer that they can within the rules. And where a lot of those tradespeople, by the way, are in tremendous demand, meaning, I was having a talk with a friend the other day. This isn't necessarily relevant, but he's in the hotel business and he's talking about housekeepers and what's happened in the housekeeping business, particularly in light of ICE raids. Like, the housekeeping industry in hotels is collapsing. Like, it just does not have enough people and hasn't since COVID and hasn't been able to recover. Even in that environment where you're dealing with skilled tradespeople, even more demand, even more constrained, it's in the best interest of all business owners who have skilled tradespeople interfacing with customers for those employees to be at their absolute level best every minute of every day, both for safety and for brand. And whatever you can do that is a cost-effective, scalable, non-destructive way to improve their engagement is a bonus to you, period.
Yeah, Gabe, you said a key phrase there that I want to hone in on and throw to you, Steve, which is that phrase going above and beyond. And certainly we see rationale makes a lot of sense for me, right? If you're expecting a paycheck, then it just feels like that's the baseline. And then if you want me to go above and beyond, then I need to I want to feel motivated to go above and beyond. The reason I ask this, Steve, is because the restoration industry is built on above and beyond. That's the
Yes.
baseline, right? It's evenings, it's weekends, it's
Yes.
ankle deep in sewage. What difference have you found just engaging your staff through things like creating a culture that recognizes the above and beyond impacts an employee's willingness to go above and beyond?
Yeah, it's good. Good point. So the $50 bonus for going out at 2 a.m. or the $100 bonus on the weekend doesn't work anymore. And what we're seeing is, I guess, to piggyback off glasses about that whole casino mentality. It's not just we're saying great or we're creating a gamification. It's also they don't necessarily know when we're going to do it. So it creates a culture of they want to learn, they want to be trained to be the best. And the generation we're working with right now, they want to know the why behind everything, right? Like I think I've said this before to you is if I tell you to take this wall down today, you're going to do it. But at some point, I'm going to hope you ask me why, or it's a fairly boring job. And that paycheck that we're referencing just is not going to make up for it. But if I can train you why before you take down the wall, and I continue to deliver that training along the way, you have a sense of fulfillment. You have a sense of I'm going to start here and finish here. And if along the way you're getting a data boy or a trophy or different people in the organization are highlighting, like we had a lot of great customer feedback, right? And customers give good feedback when they trust the employee that's in front of them. And how do they trust them? Well, the person's well trained and well versed, and it can explain the why to the customer. It's a circle that keeps feeding each other's ecosystem of we're going to train you, you're going to feel better. The customer's going to tell you you did a great job too. We're going to tell you a great job, and you get the paycheck. It's just these layers that start to build on top of each other, and over time that creates a culture, and then the culture leads to retention.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we've had a great comment and question already in the chat. If you've got questions as well, please throw them in the chat. And it actually aligns perfectly with what you mentioned, Steve. Throwing a $50 bonus, $100 bonus, it doesn't really motivate people the same way it used to. And in Brittany's comment, she actually is in an environment where she's not able to give out $50 bonus, like monetary bonuses are just not an option. And so I'm curious, Gabe, I'll throw it to you first, then Jeff, then Steve. What are some of the levers outside of just Amazon gift cards, monetary bonuses that you've noticed will help encourage people to continue to go the extra mile?
So, I created this framework. There's a lot of kind of more holistic ways of thinking about that, and I'm sure that Steve, probably's got what his company's values are that they ascribe to, and I want to hear them. But I've created some more tactical. We're just bring it down to the slightly more tactical level to that question. I've created a framework that's called SAPS that has been in wide use in industry to describe a kind of rewards hierarchy that's highly effective at delivering kind of incentives and rewards for good behavior. And that stands for status, access, power, and stuff. And that list is in kind of order of things which are most powerful to least powerful. I'll explain them really quick. I won't belabor the point. Most powerful to least powerful, also conveniently cheapest to most expensive in order, right? So status is something that makes somebody feel good, gives them some recognition. The closest example in an airline, we just use an airline loyalty scheme because everybody is familiar with that. That's the status that you earn. That is the, whatever that gives you every year, the constellation of benefits that you get for it. Access is giving you the ability to do something that not everybody gets to do. So in the airline example, that's the early boarding scenario. So it doesn't really cost the company anything, but it does create a great deal of happiness and engagement with people in general. Power is when you give people control over something that they otherwise wouldn't have control over. And, it can be, as simple as more historically good example in the workplace was people with more seniority got to choose their vacation days first, but vacation days perhaps could be based more on a performance type metric rather than on seniority, as an example. And then stuff is anything else, cash, gift cards, and so on and so forth. And so, the first three are more complicated to engineer. But the most important thing, and there's lots of tools you can use and lots of ideas that I'm sure our listeners are immediately thinking about, things that they can offer, that they would offer under those schema. The most important thing to remember is that because habituation affects all rewards similarly, so all rewards ultimately become less valuable over time. It's to your advantage to try to construct rewards which are non-cash, because you're going to have to keep upping the ante. And so as you're upping the ante, it's better to up the ante with things that are not cash for obvious business reasons. Yes. So that's your incentive to come up with something creative.
And that framework, SAPS, SAPS.
Yeah.
Status, access, power, stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Jeff, how about yourself? What have you seen working when it comes to non-monetary rewards that seem to motivate team members?
So the first thing I would suggest to Brittany is to have Gabe come up and consult and talk and figure things out.
Sure.
Because that was great, Gabe. That's good stuff. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, it's a tough spot because if you want to base your having people feel valued and appreciated with money or stuff, and you don't have that, that's one thing. But what if you do have it? And we have already talked about this. Is it really going to matter? I look at it as it's going to matter in the short term. Just like if you're paying someone a certain rate and they're not happy, maybe they're burned out, they need something to be motivated. So you say, okay, I'll give you a raise. That's going to work for a while, but pretty soon that raise is going to feel the same because it's just money becomes money. So I saw a comic on social media recently and it was funny, but also realistic. And it was think about this as owners or managers trying to appease issues. So Brittany wants to make her people feel valued and appreciated. So this comic was like a group of people in a team meeting. And they're like, boss, we're just not happy. There's something not we just not we're kind of burned out. And the boss says, it's okay. Let's have some pizza. So he orders pizza. They're happy for the meal. And then the next day it's the same thing. So
Hmm.
I guess if we were able to talk to Brittany, I'd ask, how are things there? Like, what's the culture like? Because it sounds like she probably cares. And I think that's the biggest picture here. If you really care, it's that personal touch, it's that reach out, that letting people know they're doing a good job and that they're valued, that communication. So if you don't do that, and maybe if you work remotely or you're working in the restoration, of course, you're working from an office, but maybe you're not in the office that much, but you need to communicate with them and let them know that they're appreciated. So I think about family, community, and we know that all of that thrives when there's more engagement. It's not the money. Money's nice, we have to have it, and they'll appreciate that. But it has to come with a pat on the back and a genuine thank you for what you do. I've had managers before who did that. They were like, "Thank you so much for helping." That doesn't cost a thing, but that means a lot. So I think about that. Just think about what makes you feel better about your work. You know, big businesses today are bringing in people. They're they're um, they're going out and trying to attract talent, not based on money, but based on benefits and other perks that the people want. So, cash is good, but it's more than that.
Yeah. Steve, on that note, what are some of the levers that you have seen work when it comes to keeping people engaged? Let's get tactical. Let's pretend money was off the table. It sounds like you don't go into that well too often, anyways. What have you found really helps keep your staff engaged, enthusiastic, feeling like a part of the team culture, and ready and willing to go the extra mile?
Well, a couple things to piggyback is our brand ambassador put out some surveys this year to our company to see what the culture was. And the one thing that unanimously they came back with was more training, which we were surprised because we thought we were doing a really great job training, right? And we're told you guys are great trainers. So, we're patting ourselves on the back. We're
Mm.
great trainers. We find out we have to do more training. So as we dug into this and we started doing more training, a couple things we realized. First of all, we weren't taking the time to recognize the people that were doing great in training and giving that public recognition, but also that one-off recognition. So if I have a technician and he passes his ISCRC, it's great. I can put in Slack, great job, Lewis. What's really great is if a couple of us leaders behind the scenes text Lewis directly, who doesn't even know we have his phone number, and say, hey, we're really proud of you, Lewis. Great job at the IRCRC, great job at the certification. The other thing we found was investing in some training and certifications that an employee can take with them if they leave, right? Like
Mm.
not just, oh, we own this training, it's proprietary. It's, hey, at this training, for instance, the training I'm at right now, at the Restoration Training Academy, I have 4 guys with me. Well, they're going to get these certifications for various items here, operating equipment. It's their name. They're taking that with them and making sure that your employees know that the training we're going to provide for you is you. We're investing in you. Sure, we benefit on the back end through customer experience. That's out there. But at the end of the day, if you decide that you don't align with what we're doing here anymore, when you leave, you're going to be able to put this on your resume, and it's your training, and that knowledge transfer is going with you to wherever your future takes you.
So
Awesome.
can we just say how exciting that is, Steve? So I have to tell you, before the webinar started, we were having a brief conversation we didn't get into about what's the difference between white collar and blue collar or trades and knowledge worker type employee incentives. The number of times I've heard that in a knowledge worker learning and development environment is close to zero. What you just said, employees begging for more training, because most of the time that training is perceived, even though there's huge training libraries at most large companies, with incredible resources that can help you really level up your career. Most of the time it's perceived so negatively. So it sounds like you've really unlocked something there with your employees that's really quite special. Why, if you don't mind me asking, why do you think they want more training from you so much? Because it's such an unusual and interesting
So
thing to hear.
I think what's happened over the last year is we've done a better job of highlighting the individuals that start at the bottom and work their way up in the company.
Okay.
So we're showing this path to the top that happened within our company. And also, hey, I'm so and so. This is what I did before I came here. I came with zero knowledge, right? I worked my way up hard. And this is before we had all these assets like know-how and various trainings. And I'm at the top. And there's a celebration now of, I think also maybe Jeff can test this at the restoration and cleaning. There's been a lot of technology now, right? You're just not coming in and working hard through the day. You're going to have to toggle between technologies. You're going to have to know different methodologies, different carriers. So you have to be very knowledgeable and constantly learning. And I think what's happening at our organization is people are seeing that. They're seeing that the congratulations are going to these individuals that are doing this. And moreover, when you do that, to kind of piggyback off what you said earlier, is if someone's seeing they're getting accolades or people are reaching out to them because they're learning, all of a sudden they pivot and they might tap into that library you're talking about, that stale library that's over here no one's been touching, and they start grabbing at it and they start demonstrating they can do something, and now they're getting more accolades. And that's snowballing. And now if I'm sitting here in the corner and I'm a guy that hasn't been learning or been a little complacent, maybe, right? I was here for the paycheck. I'm like, well, that looks fun. He's having fun. Well, maybe I should start learning too. And it starts to snowball. It starts to be contagious. And that's the culture you start to see around you. And what's really cool is then when you look, maybe people don't know you're watching and someone's training someone else. They weren't told to. And they're teaching them a skill that they learned.
Awesome. That's so good. And I do think that you guys have tapped into something special at FP. And one of the goals here through this conversation is to help surface that in other companies as well that are attending this webinar or watching the video after the fact. To double click on something that both Gabe and Steve, you said, and actually Jeff, you pointed to it as well. We did a survey back in 2022 and we interviewed 400 workers in the restoration industry. And we asked them a bunch of questions. We asked them, what don't you like about your manager? What do you wish was better about your training? Why did you quit your last job? Why did good people quit your company? But one of the questions we asked restoration workers was, what motivated you to take this job that you're currently at? And then what motivates you to stay at this job? And the interesting thing is that those answers were very different. At the start, when it came to like what motivated me to choose this company or that company, the salary had an influential role, right? Hey, I can't, every company says its culture is great. Every company posts photos online of Pizza Fridays. I don't really know what the culture is like, but I can see that like little number written down on a piece of paper that tells me the wage. So that was the number two motivating factor, and it depends, right? For Gen Z, it was number one. For millennials, it was number four, salary. If you know any millennials that are like wandering through life, living their truth, finding their own path, that sounds about right. I say that as a millennial myself. But once you ask someone, well, what keeps you in your role? Salary dropped down to number five. It is way less important once someone's in the role, and it's less sticky compared to things like team culture, growth opportunities, gaining new skills. And so that's that whole piece about what motivates people to lean in once they're in the door. It is like you were saying, Steve, it's the career growth opportunities. It's highlighting, hey, someone started in a junior position. Now, 2, 3 years later, they have a lot of responsibility and they've really been able to form a career path for themselves, and that could be you next. Like you said, Jeff, it's that the team culture. How are you facilitating a dynamic where people are leaning on each other and they're enjoying working alongside each other and they're not just mercenaries, but they really feel like a team and like a unit. And so I want to talk a little bit about the team culture piece next, because what I see is gamification. So, for example, let's say I'm watching this webinar. I recognize I've got a really unmotivated, unengaged staff, and I just want to like shortcut my way to solving my problems as fast as possible. I might watch this webinar and be like, oh, okay, great. All I have to do is throw a leaderboard up in the break room for who, I don't know, logs the most hours in a week. And there, I've gamified my staff. I've solved my engagement problem. I think we would all agree that that's probably not going to end in the results that you're hoping for. And so, Gabe, let me throw it to you first. What are the elements that have to be in place at like a surface level on this, maybe like little Maslow's hierarchy of needs? What are those things that have to exist for things like gamification, leaderboards, challenges, that kind of like motivating above and beyond? What has to exist in order for those to actually have an impact?
Well, okay, if you're, I think the flip side of that question, I'll just start with like, sometimes people ask me to help them fix a very broken culture that, they're like, the culture is really not working. We're having a lot of problems. We've got a huge amount of churn. People are very unhappy. Can you come in and gamify our culture? And I'm like, sure, but if the fundamental pieces are not really working, so therefore, what you alluded to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but let's call them more core, respect, for example, the sense of progress. If all those things are not really in place and the organization is truly dysfunctional, then, we're not going to be able to like sprinkle some magic gaming dust on something and make it like, suddenly it's going to be amazing, right? We might temporarily make people happier, but things will revert to the mean. So, so I think there are, just fundamentals as a entrepreneur who's run teams. Myself, I started with respect, right? But that's a big one for a lot of people. I think there's some, fundamental stuff there. And let's also be clear that, even in terms of compensation, basic compensation elements nonetheless need to work for the psychology of the employee. So in some fields, in some professions, it's normal to have highly variable compensation. So commission salespeople expect highly variable compensation, for example. And that's part of the gig. But if base compensation isn't where it needs to be and people are feeling really pressed on that, then non-cash rewards are not going to take the place of the gap between base compensation expectations and the person's ability to feel comfortable in their job. So we really are talking about, to a great extent, we're talking about additive circumstances.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If someone's spending most of their time worried about how they're going to put food on the table,
Yeah.
some kind of challenge that ends up with like a Pizza Friday or something like that is not going to solve that problem ultimately. Steve, I'm curious from your perspective, and you can talk about FP, you can talk about other companies that you've seen. What has to exist for some of those what Gabe was calling additive techniques, layering on top of the culture to work well? What elements have to exist in that culture first and forehand before it works properly?
So first, in our leadership, which would be our operations managers, they have to be bought in,
Yeah.
right? If they just can't be giving cursory and saying, "Hey, we're going to do a competition." They have to be a little competitive themselves, and want to. And by competitive, meaning like they're giving data boys, they're congratulating people, they're being genuine about it, and there's a level of integrity that has to exist there. So everyone, when no one's watching, is walking the walk and doing the same thing. They're not just saying it in public; they're saying it in private. So if I'm sitting here right now with a technician and he does something great, I'm making sure he knows he did it great. No one has to hear me say it. The most important person is that technician hears me say you did a great job. The other thing is the companies that we network with. Um, that's important as well. So right now I'm down here at the Restoration Training Academy. We're with like Builder Services or with World Plus, whatever. They're similar companies. So now our employees are networking with other employees that get the same sort of congratulations and awards and gamification. So when they're communicating, they're hearing synergy there. They're not hearing anything about, oh, I hate it here, negativity, or I get paid this. It's like, we do this. This is great. Oh, and they're learning from each other. So there's a lot of layers that we tend to that in the past we didn't think we had to tend to it. Take it now back to your hiring strategy and training. When we're hiring and we're interviewing, we're looking for characteristics, or we're asking questions in the interview process. Maybe they were in sports, maybe they won awards outside of sports for academics, but we're working. If someone puts something on their resume about awards they won, we know that matters to them, right? We know that there's an accolade that mattered to them. And then even during training, you're getting the feel for people and talking to them and seeing, how are they taking to learning? What sort of learning? Is it hands-on? Is it book? Is it I show you, you show me, and I'll prove you can do it? The various steps we have to go through. But one thing is for it to work at our company is we really had to realize that all 65, 70 employees are not the same. Right. And we really had to, and we're not there yet by any means. We got them in groups, we think, right now. And those groups are going to get smaller. But as we get people into their bucket of this is how this person wants to learn and this is what makes them tick, it works so much better, because then we can put them in trainings with similar individuals, and we can make the training specific to how they want to learn, and then also give them the backup and reinforcement they need, and then track that later on. So there's still work to be done, but we're seeing in 2025 exponentially is paying off with retention. And I hate to use the word job joy, but there's just some conversations that take place offline or messages you get that matter, right? And even as a leader, it's funny because I will say to technician, hey, congratulations. When you get a text message back from someone ahead of time that says, hey, I want to thank you for that training you put me through, it mattered. You want to do that 20 times over again, right? So it actually flows to the top as well.
That's great. And actually, I think that speaks to Brittany's question in the chat here. Thanks everyone for the lively chat asking about, when you don't have a celebration budget, when you don't have bonuses. Steve, what I hear you saying is sometimes it's as simple as leadership recognizing you privately or in front of your peers. Hey, I really think you did a great job.
Yep. Just to build up, I have a guy with me here at this training I'm at today who's six-figure earner, and he was in a funk, right? And he had been with us for a while. I could not figure it out. And he went as far as to tell me it's not about the money, right? And me, of course, I took a little offense to that. Like, it's not about the money, make a lot of money. Well, he's at this training right now, heavily engaged with vendors and suppliers. And I've never seen him this engaged, never seen him this happy, like coming up to me, talking to me about the industry and things. And had me step back and be like, okay, I get it now. This is something that lacked for him. I looked away, he was a little far up the line where I was worried about our technicians, and he's pretty high up there that, well, we need to pay attention to what's going on at the top as well and get them engaged, because as they're getting engaged and they're happier, now that's going to flow down. So there's some flowing that has to happen there. And it was take your eye off the ball for too long and you could lose a good employee.
Yeah. So what was the solution for him?
I think I haven't asked him that. So okay. I just think for him, it was getting him. So we're in Charlotte. I got him outside of Florida where we're traveling. You're outside of that daily grind. He's around people of equal or higher value or in terms of skill level. And he's having to skill up right now, right? So for once, he doesn't feel like the best person in the room. He's having to skill up. He's having to learn. He's getting to speak to vendors and suppliers like the person, like it'd be Kevin Dooley at Cocky, it'd be Chris Sadie at E3. They're there telling him things and teaching him things like, wow, there's so much more to my position that I wasn't aware of. And I think where he might have thought that he was there and like, this is my day to day. Now he realizes a ceiling he's going to break through. And there's a whole nother level of being the best, right? Yeah. And there's a whole nother level of me saying, congratulations, you did a good job that he wasn't getting because he had hit that ceiling. Or for lack of a better term, I allowed him to hit that ceiling. He didn't notice he needed to be trained and have some things to go above it.
Yeah. That's great. What reminds me, what you're saying, Steve, if anyone who's watching this webinar has not read the book Drive by Daniel Pink, it's an excellent book. And I'm, Gabe, you're in this space all day, so I'm going to like totally oversimplify. Feel free to correct and walk back everything I say. But one of the things he says is there's three basic human motivators. There's autonomy, me being able to choose my own path, me feeling like I'm in control of the direction here. There's mastery, my ability to go really deep in a subject and feel like an expert. And Steve, that's what I hear you describing with this individual, me recognizing, holy smokes, there's a deep well here of skills that I can learn. And then purpose as well. And I remember, Jeff, you were mentioning that, hey, like, how does this connect to the larger thing we're trying to do here? How does your ability to get an insurance claim in on time or to drive out to a job site within 2 hours of getting a claim, how does that affect this larger thing we're trying to do, which is restore somebody's home after a hurricane and bring them back to normal on maybe the worst day of their life? Autonomy, mastery, purpose, big, big motivators. Gabe, anything else that you would round out there? Feel free to just say, Travis, you got to stop listening to audiobook summaries of these books and actually read them
Uh,
because you're way off
no,
base.
that's no. That's great, and I think Dan would himself be happy with your
That's
quick
good.
summary on that. And I think the important thing about autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? It's just let's just move back into the zone of like thinking about more specific motivators and training and stuff. Because Steve's been talking a lot about training. So one of the interesting things to double click on there is, um, you can often people say that they want to do what's best for themselves, but they don't do it. Okay. So we observe this in every aspect of human life, right? Most people know that they shouldn't smoke and they do. They don't argue that smoking is actually fine for them. Right? They know they shouldn't do it. They know they shouldn't have those extra drinks. They know they shouldn't have that seventh burger of the week, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So, but people still end up doing these things that are not necessarily best for them. If you drill down into the work environment, it's even more difficult in the work environment for people to necessarily always make the best decisions for themselves. Sometimes most of the time because they're very busy, but also because of the way incentives and stuff are structured, but also because they often don't know. Like your job as the leader, your job as the owner of the organization, you are supposed to have the perspective, the vision, the foresight to say, hey, bud, if you do these trainings over time, you will improve your career. You will, be better, right? That's your job. You got to lead here. Okay. So what gamification and behavioral engineering help you do is they help you sometimes bridge the gap where the person's got that inherent motivation, but not that external action. And so what you try to do is incentivize their action. So they just get in the habit of doing the thing that ultimately is best for them. And once that positive thing is spinning, like, you're talking about, employees seeing each other do well and move up and progress and stuff. Once you've got the positive vibe machine spinning, it's much easier to keep that machine moving. But at the beginning, you got to move people sometimes when they're in inertia mode, and these incentives can really help do that.
And if anyone's looking for good examples of exactly what Gabe is describing, I would suggest look no further than something like Duolingo or something like Peloton or Apple Fitness, one of these fitness apps. And what they do is they take something that people say they want to do, such as learn a new language, work out, even though their day-to-day behavior does not match that, and then starts applying the levers of social recognition. Hey, you're on your 10th workout in a row. I'm going to let all of Travis's friends know. Or hey, you just reached a new level in learning Spanish. Why don't we alert the world? Why don't I share it to my Facebook? Where you get these little things like the habituation that Gabe talked about. Hey, every single day, can you come in? Can you even do 5 minutes? And like Gabe said, start to build some of that inertia. Steve, I want to talk about gamification specifically. And when I say gamification, what I mean is like challenges, maybe what Gabe was talking about,
Got it.
behavioral engineering, like rallying people around something that's kind of tangible, helps quantify, are they going in the right direction here? And recognizing maybe the behavioral piece a little bit more explicitly. And I want to break it into two categories. What I would say is jobs that are easy to like quantify progress. So maybe something like sales would be a really great example of that, or customer support. And then jobs that are hard to quantify. Hey, you're like crushing it right now. Maybe that's like HR, office administrative work, things like that. So let's start with like the more surface level, easy side of things. Steve, how do you think about engagement, gamification, challenges when it comes to those sales roles, those customer support roles, those roles where the metrics are a little bit easier to define what success looks like?
So one right now we're doing is close ratio. It's how many times we get called up is how many times we actually sign a job. And people could attach that to revenue from a company standpoint, but we attach it to, how are we presenting ourselves? How are we explaining the job? How's our customer service? We can track that back to how did we, and this is kind of connecting the two, bridging them. How did our admin inbound the phone call, right? We can't really usually know that, but we know, did they get good data? How did we follow through? How did we get our paperwork in? And we're using a software like JOC, Jock Analytics. So it'll just put it up there. Hey, we want to hit 70%. Here's your percent as a company. One thing we're doing with this specific initiative is we're doing as a company. So everyone's rallying each other, right? Everyone's cheering on the wins because your win helps me, helps that person, and has a snowball effect. And if they do that through the end of the quarter, there is a monetary bonus. There's also some PTO, right? So it's time off, money to spend, don't come to work. Within that, we're doing it a little competition with the project managers month to month. Who's got the best signing ratio? So now we have a contest within the contest, tracking that as well. And then within that, we have the offices that are competing offline, and we had a title belt made from a trophy company, and it's a nice little heavyweight title belt. And that's getting those operations managers talking a little trash offline about, if I have the best, I have my title belt, and later on, if Jeff has it, I got to go deliver that to his office. So there's a little bit of nose in the mud in front of some other people. Here's a title belt. So some competition, some gamification going on there. It gets much harder when you get off, like, let's say estimators, or let's say in our industry, estimators is very hard to quantify that. HR is one. I think something that's important to do that is early on, very early on, you need to determine what metrics are important, right? Like there can be data overload. And I've been very guilty of, like, today I want to look at this data set. Today I want to look at that data set. I spin people around sometimes doing that. And it's like, hey, for 2025, we're going to look at these five data sets. Focus here. This is what a win is. And identify what a win is, right? Identify this is where we want to be at the forum. This is a win. And then what skill set has to go into that, right? Like it just can't be trying harder. Anything that involves trying harder, there's a burnout factor. And then when you get there and it resets, what you have to try harder again. So if it was retention on the AR side, it's going to be like, okay, what classes do we need to take to interview better, right? Or who else can I get in the company to help me? So it's difficult when you get to those positions, but also we have found that taking those individuals out and saying, hey, if all things were recreated perfectly, what would the process look like? Giving them a say in the process, like estimators are saying how it's inspected, or HR is saying how we're onboarded. All of a sudden they're like, oh wow, you're gonna listen to what I have to say. Like absolutely, we're gonna listen to what you have to say. Put it on paper and let's see what we can adapt. We probably can't adapt at all, but now we're giving them a say. They have a say. They're bought into the new process. They're seeing that metric that we predetermined went up, and they're equating that to their efforts and their ideas. So it's a little bit different, I think, than the gamification you're talking about, but it's what we found works. And one thing I just want to touch on, you touched on Apple Fitness. There's a very cheap software called Kahoot, and we are adapting that now. Here's a funny story. With the immigration process happening, we actually have our brand ambassador, her husband's going through the immigration process, and she was telling me about the software we're using, Kahoot, to answer the questions about citizenship and everything. And she goes, it's very easy. She sends it to me. It has a leaderboard. You can pick your little icons and everything. So when you're in a training, everyone could be on Kahoot answering a question that you have, and boom, people are moving up a leaderboard. Now it's fun, right? It's almost like you said, Peloton. Who's winning the race, right? Who's out in front? And we are just adapting that now, but it's something I'm excited about because it has a little bit of excitement. You can do it by office. You can do it by employees. We're doing these trainings.
That's
And
awesome.
you mean Kahoot, by the way, Kahoot, the online training application,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
So if you guys haven't seen this, those of you on the webinar, it's going to look a little kindergarten-y when you first go there. I think because
I was going to say, when my son
yeah,
was in grade 1 was how I discovered it, but it's great.
Yeah,
We've used
it
it
got
internally.
popular under COVID in middle schools, so it looks a little funky, but it's incredibly like simple, cheap, powerful tool you can use to do these kind of online quizzes and stuff. I think it's really good at kind of interactive quizzes and stuff. Yeah,
making for sure people are following along with you, and and again, it's like if I'm in an office here and I have someone in an office 8 hours away that I may never have met before, all of a sudden, we're competing a little bit. How is he getting his answers right?
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Gabe, I want to ask you, and then I'll throw it to you, Jeff. Steve gave a bunch of really great examples of ways to create engagement, both in those quantifiable roles and those less quantifiable roles. Gabe, I wonder if there's any things in what in what Steve said that you're like, oh, there's the principle at play here that I recognized, and if there's anything that you would round out that you would say, in addition to all of these, here's a few other tactics that I've seen work well in similar companies that you'd encourage people on the webinar to try.
Yeah, so I think it came right at the end there, but I did want to say something, which is about kind of friendly competition between people. One bias that often in my work I notice, so leadership at most companies tends to be people who are often successful as especially small business owners and entrepreneurs tend to be like low key competitive and sometimes high key competitive. And so through the lens of a startup founder and entrepreneur, competition always feels like kind of natural and sort of normal, and you know that may be the case. Most people are not that into like real like knockdown drag out competition. Like, that's not really something they find super fun, unless it's like rigged so they're going to win. So most people like kind of friendlier competition and lighter competition, and so I think that kind of friendly, engaging, a little bit of banter, a little bit of, crosstalk kind of, hey, let me challenge you to this, but not with the kind of caustic, like, winner take all sort of vibes. I think actually can be really powerful for team building and engagement. And so that's a thing we often work on when we're thinking about, gamified systems. Let's a little bit of competition goes a long way. Always try to keep it as friendly as possible. Unless you've got a big enough team where you can segment out. And then the people who love real competition, they can be really motivated by real competition. But you've got to make sure that you like know who those people are and you don't try to force the like non-competitive people into like highly competitive environments because they often like shut down in those settings rather than thrive in those settings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's safe to say that there's certain roles that attract one personality type
Yeah,
versus
yeah,
another personality type as well.
sure.
So competition in the sales environment probably is fertile soil, maybe compared to a bunch of office administrators or something like that as well. Jeff, I'm curious from your perspective, have you seen any additional techniques that you would recommend companies consider when it comes to gamifying, incentivizing people to go above and beyond?
So maybe just to add to what I've already heard, because they've already covered a lot of good stuff. I had a few notes here, things that I've seen. Um, Quizzes, I've seen those used in a good way, like some kind of weekly quiz system where there's no pressure, but people could have fun with it. Or writing funny stories, of a storytelling contest, something that can have a lot of value when everyone's reading it. People, if you laugh together, that's a big deal.
Hmm.
Just like having a meal together, not a pizza on Friday at the end of the day. Everyone's still got that ankle deep sewage on their pants, like you mentioned, Travis, which keeps a lot of good workers away, right? That alone. But um, but if I could comment on something else in addition to that, that I heard everyone talking about here, like Steve Sky, who's now maybe a little motivated. He's an employee, but I don't see an employee as someone who can't be an entrepreneur. And I think if they have that drive and they're in that cage, that's not going to be good. They're going to want to do something else. They're going to want to move up or expand and do something different. And the training part, I love that because when you invest in training for your people, they're going to value that, but it has to be the right kind of training. So, Steve, kudos on what you're doing there. And I want to share one experience. I was at a training event, and there were three techs there who restoration, and the boss had sent them to this training class. It was where they had to take the test, and the boss told them in advance that he had to let one of them go because someone had to lose their job, be laid off, and the tech who had the lowest score on the test was going to be the one. True story. And those three guys were there together, standing outside talking to me about this. Total transparency. They're like, yeah, we just, and none of them wanted to have someone leave. They were buddies. There was a good culture within a company that had a terrible culture, if you know what I mean. So I say talk to your people. Ask them what they like to do. Let them know you're looking for ideas to make their place better. And they know you are. That's no secret. Brittany put in or who was it up here? Lori put in about giving people time off as an incentive or as a reward. I think that's good, but if it's automatic, I don't know if that has a lot of value. Like you get your birthday off. Okay. But I've had people in the past where it was like a Friday at noon, they'd had a good week, they did a lot. I'm like, just take off. And that meant a lot because spur of the moment. It wasn't something like on the schedule or planned and it worked. Now in restoration, that might not work as well. Maybe it would. But those are my thoughts. Games are great, make them fun. If you do something where there's a leaderboard and you walk by and it's like, oh, it's Bob again. It's Bob again. Who cares? That
Hmm.
has little value. But if it's fun and engaging
Bob.
and everyone feels
Yeah,
part of it,
Bob's loving it, to be
Bob's
honest.
Bob's
loving it.
like, Bob's a lot, man. Everyone
Yeah.
needs to sit down and talk to Bob for a minute because he's been a lot.
People resent Bob, let me tell you.
something about that though with the Bob thing is if you have a program built in where it's like your best employees, right, or your best leaders go to the bottom three or the bottom four, and you're going to mentor them. And
Hmm.
now I'm gonna get you to the top. Like you want to be at the top, we're gonna go to the top. We're
Yeah.
gonna go down there. We're gonna catch Bob, right? We're gonna beat Bob. So I mean, it's something that we have not done that yet. So it's not like something that we've employed, but it's like, hey, if you're gonna have a leaderboard, the point of the leaderboard is to probably get the people at the bottom to the top,
Yeah.
not just identify who's at the top. And if you're gonna do that, something along those lines of get to the bottom and let's figure out why they're at the bottom and train them up.
Yeah, that's such a great point, actually. Our CEO Leighton will often say internally to our team, it's one thing to be a high performance contributor. It's another thing to be a coach of high performance
Mhm.
contributors, someone who creates high performance contributors. That's really, that's where Bob his sights should be set on at this point.
Can we
Yeah.
can I also throw one other thing out that
Please.
just came up there, which I think is really important that Jeff mentioned. So novelty is like super important and shouldn't be underestimated. The surprise and delight element of a reward system. If there's like one easy gamification technique that you can use, a little bit of surprise and delight goes a long way. You shouldn't build an entire incentive scheme on surprise and delight, but using it sparingly, using it smartly, and as an executive leader, empowering your second line leadership to be able to use surprise and delight well is really can really be powerful. You can instrument surprise and delight so that behind the scenes you're doing complicated math to decide who should get the rewards and incentives that that's like just go home or like you've earned a like special quick incentive. But it is important to keep a little bit of freshness and a little bit of fresh things kind of coming through the system because people really will get used to anything no matter how cool it is that you've
Yeah.
developed. At some point, you just become inured to the coolness. So you do need to mix things up periodically.
Yeah, and there's no one best answer for everything. You
Right.
have to look at your company and what you do. I know, Travis, earlier you talked about company culture and everyone says they do. I do a lot of interviews with companies. I ask, let's talk about what works for you. Oh, it's the people, it's our culture. They all say that. And it could be true, but if everyone's saying it, you got to wonder,
Hmm.
what
Yeah.
is.
So we're I want to do a rapid fire close and it's actually exactly what you talked about, Gabe. So I just want to highlight something Gabe said. If you're listening and you are like, this has been great, what tangible things can I put in my pocket and walk away with and say this was a good use of my last hour? Quote from Gabe that just stuck out to me. A little surprise and delight goes a long way. A little surprise and delight goes a long way. So let me use that as yeah, mic drop or just end the webinar here.
Sprinkle.
Yeah, that's right. So let me use that as a launching pad for a rapid fire question for all three of you. What are some small actionable steps that someone watching this webinar can take if they want to begin to add elements of gamification or challenges to engage and motivate their staff, knowing they can't boil the whole ocean. It takes a long time to really build the right culture, but what are some small things that they can start to do right away? Gabe, I'll throw it to you first.
I mean, just like I said, literally the easiest thing to do is that surprise and delight. But if I was going to start something from scratch, let's say, I would spend a little bit of time with leadership real quick. Think about some status, access, and power benefits that might exist in your ecosystem and in your company that you can allocate as particularly interesting incentives or rewards for your team. So really do a little bit of visioning work, sit down and really think that through. Like, what's a thing that we can offer? The classic old one used to be the parking spot, the best parking spot that went to the employee of the month. I know now we think of that as kind of like silly or whatever, but that is that same exact philosophy. That is that philosophy. The employee of the month on the wall at the fast food restaurant is that exact same core philosophy. It is a core part of American business and American culture that has been around for literally since the Industrial Revolution in this country. So your job, your mission as an employer is to find a new, fresh, and culturally specific and appropriate way to implement those things in your company. But all of those things are on the table, and being creative, that's a great opportunity to be creative.
Awesome. Steve, how about yourself? What's a small actionable step you encourage people
So
to take?
right off the bat, I'd use something like a Survey Monkey and find someone dependable in the company that can really start to get the feel for what the team's looking for in terms of gamification. This way, when the leadership comes together, like Gabe was saying, like they're not giving their opinion on the past. It's like this is the real data we're looking at. Forget the past, this is what we have to look at. And then set a budget, even if it's a small budget, shoestring budget. Hey, what do we have? What do we have in front of us that we can use? Something else is pull up a calendar. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's 2 or 3 months, and try to put things on the calendar so you don't forget about it, right? Especially in restoration where things just go crazy. You can have a great initiative right now and just all of a sudden you get this string of fires and floods and forget about it. And if you don't have it on the calendar reminders, or you don't create that hammer who's going to say, hey, Steve, by the way, this is the week we said we were going to do X, it could go away. And I'll tell you, in our industry, when things are going crazy, if you stop and do that recognition, or you stop and do that event, or you stop and do that incentive, man, it hits home that much harder, because all of a sudden people are like, how did they remember that? Well, it's part of our culture. It matters. You told us it matters. We listened. And then you keep doing that. And over time, when you see the results, that budget or the ability gets a little bit bigger over time. You can do some really fun things.
Awesome. Jeff, what small step would you encourage people to take after this webinar?
Totally not fair. I go last.
You could just say ditto.
So I'm going to say ditto, but there's something that I used to do in business, and that was gather testimonials. That was important. And if it was, now we're talking years ago. Leave a postcard. They could put their comments in it, and they send it back. If you leave a stamped postcard behind, people are going to use it. It's easy. They're going to write some little note. So my idea would be maybe twofold, something like that, where at the end of a job, you somehow gather a comment from a client, or you go online and find out what they said about your company. So if you're a company who's really engaged in marketing and you're doing that, you're getting those reviews, and you're doing several jobs a week, or whatever it is, you're going to have a lot of good comments. And then end of the week or end of the month, then read those, share, and call out those great jobs done by people in the company, and give them those kudos and make it genuine. And maybe there's a reward there, but just anytime someone is really genuinely applauded in front of the whole team, that has a lot of value. And that's a system you can build, a program you could build. And I just think that has a lot of value. So, yeah, play games, have fun, but just do something to really show you care about your people.
Awesome. Hey, great contributions. I really think there's just a ton of meat on this bone. For anyone in the chat that wants to rewatch this webinar, this will be live on YouTube shortly, so you'll be able to watch it there, and we'll send out a link to everyone who attended or registered. All right, last round, last lap here, victory lap here. I want to just ask, hey, if someone wanted to follow up with you, Jim had a great question in the chat earlier. What's the URL? How can I get a hold of you? If I've got any follow-up questions, what's the best way to contact or find out more? Gabe, I'll throw it to you first.
Oh yeah, and you can. I mean, I'm really easy to find if that was really the question. Yeah, LinkedIn is easy. It's anytime you type in Gabe and then ZI, my last name is Zickerman, you'll probably I'll come up pretty fast. But LinkedIn is great, Instagram is great.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. Steve, if people are looking to get a hold of you, just drive down to Florida.
Just drive to Florida, we'll be there. But yeah, same thing. LinkedIn, Z in the name always helps. So find me on LinkedIn or Steve at fprestoration.com.
Awesome. Jeff?
So I would never go to Florida this time of year, but maybe to see Steve, I would. So if you go to cleanfacts.com, you'll see I'm the media director. I'm on LinkedIn as well. The problem with my name is there's also a former football player, I think it was with Miami, who was like a defensive something. His name is Jeff Cross. So I still haven't can't beat him on Google, but I'm working on it. Yeah,
If,
working on it.
if, if I can give a plug for the middle name branding, I had a Travis Martin in the city next to mine that got into some trouble with the law, and that's when I started putting Travis Parker Martin in my name on LinkedIn. So there you go. You can find me, Travis Parker Martin, on LinkedIn, Travis at tryknowhow.com. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I really enjoyed this conversation. I thought it was phenomenal. Great learning for me, and I know for everyone who attended as well. Thanks to Gabe, Jeff, and Steve for your
Thank
contributions.
you.
And we'll see everyone later. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.